Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this exciting discussion by ETRetail and Salesforce on the theme Unraveling the Architecture of D2C Platforms. In today's rapidly evolving business landscape, the rise of D2C has changed how products reach consumers and how businesses engage with their audience. In our discussion today, we aim to delve into the basics of D2C, the key architecture that's needed, and also touch upon some important threads and trends that are shaping up the industry. We have a very wide, varied, and experienced set of speakers today. So, without further ado, I'll request our speakers to turn on their camera one by one and share their introduction. We can start with Sridhar.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks, Pallavi, for having me on this, very interesting panel discussion that we're going to have over the next hour or so. I represent Salesforce today. I lead our solution engineering team, and retail is one of my passions. I've been working in the industry for more than 2 decades, and in my role, I advise teams on their D2C journeys. I recommend the solutions that are required in order to build a sustainable and a scalable, D2C platform. That's a little bit about my role, and I'm really happy to be here and looking forward to the discussion.
Thanks, Sridhar. Juhi?
Hi, thanks a lot, Pallavi, for having me here. I have about 13 years of experience, largely spread across startups and large corporates like where I work currently, Marico. I had the digital transformation and international e-commerce at Marico, and I work very closely with the acquired and in-house digital brands that we have developed. And it's an interesting journey right now where India is, because digital is changing the game altogether, both for consumer as well as brands like us. So very happy to be here.
You, Juhi. Amit?
Hi, thank you for inviting me to this webinar. And congratulations to Pallavi and the whole ETRetail team for organizing such a fantastic event. I had revenue and marketing at Gynoveda. My background, I've been in the industry for the last 10 years. I have worked with a couple of startups and helped them cover the journey of 0 to 1 as per the book. And these are interesting times in India where a lot of investments are coming in, and a lot of new age brands are leveraging those investments and reaching out and opening up new markets for consumers. Thank you guys. Thank you for having me here.
Thanks, Amit. Sudeep?
Hi guys, I'm Sudeep. I lead the D2C business here at Vosk and Science. Been here for about 1 year now. Prior to that, I was with Swiggy, where I was doing growth marketing for them for about 5 years, and then worked with OLX. And I've also worked with Coca-Cola in the past. So have worked in traditional companies and new age companies, both across, offline and online marketing largely. I'm very excited to be here in the panel.
Thanks, Sudeep. Jatin?
Hey, thank you so much for having me as part of this webinar, and I'm glad that the co-panelists are such inspiring folks who have done some very incredible work in their respective domains. I am the founder of a brand called Perfora. We're building a holistic oral wellness brand for young Indian consumers. We've been in the business for the last 2 odd years. It's been a very interesting journey trying to change the perception of a very low involvement product like oral care, and transitioning people to think about what products they should consume, why they should consume it, and how they should consume it. So I'm eagerly looking forward to the conversation and share a bit about what we've learned so far in our journey of the last 2 years. Thank you.
Thanks, Jatin. Malini?
Good afternoon. Hi, everyone. I'm Malini. I am the founder and CEO of a skincare and personal care brand called Deconstruct. We are relatively a very young brand, just been 2 years, a little over 2 years in the market right now. And we primarily do sell through online only channels like D2C as well as through marketplaces. And thanks for inviting me here today. Looking forward for discussing, on various topics with most of the folks here. And look forward to the discussion.
Thanks, Malini. Vivek?
Hi, everyone. Vivek here. Me and our team here are building fantastic consumer brands within beauty and personal care space. We have 3 of them right now: Anveya, Thriveco, and Kalwana. Very happy to see a lot of fantastic brands on this panel. Thank you so much for making me a part of this as well. Very clearly, some huge successes are to happen within the consumer brand space in the country, and I'll hope a lot of us are there as part of that. Looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, Vivek. And Dheeraj.
Hello, everyone. I think I'm super excited to be part of this elite panel. And thanks, Palvi, for organizing this wonderful discussion. For me, I come with something like 17 years into marketing only, and for 15 years building up various startups from 0 to 1, 1 to 10, 10 to 100, and build up everything from apparel to skincare to edtech to D2C. Basically, I'm working with Super Bottom as head of marketing for them, taking care of the complete business horizons for them. And I think here to gain a lot of insights and knowledge from my fellow panelists.
Thanks, Dheeraj. Wonderful. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And to kickstart our conversation here, I want to start with a very basic question to understand the why and how of D2C. And I want to ask this to you, Sridhar, from the perspective of a solution provider, as someone who tracks the industry, what is your current outlook of the D2C market in India and some key aspects of the architecture that every D2C platform needs that you'd like to highlight?
Sure. Thanks, Pallavi. Again, I'll split that question into 2 parts. Let me address the first part in terms of the outlook. I think from our perspective, we are very bullish about the prospects. D2C, as I'm sure you'll hear over the course of this discussion, the market is growing very rapidly. Consumers have really adopted new methods of buying, and that includes, of course, buying through websites and mobile apps and so on and so forth. And this is not something that is a fad that people thought was a requirement because of COVID and things like that. But I think this is a trend that's here to stay, and it is only going to get bigger and better. I think as a nation, I'm sure all of us know that we are a young demographic nation, so to speak. We are quite digitally savvy. We have a fantastic public goods, digital infrastructure already in place. So I think a lot of the basic things are already in place for us to really, grow this market. There are wide estimates. I've seen reports ranging anywhere between 100 billion to 200 billion as the size of the market by, let's say, 2025 or 2026. And I don't think, that number itself is a problem. It's really large. We are growing at approximately probably, 25 to 30%, CAGR, year on year. The number of consumers, as I said, is again going to be somewhere in the range of probably about, 500 million people being able to, buy goods and services online in the next, 3 to 4 years. That is, from a consumer perspective, right? And the other side of the story is that there is a tremendous amount of interest from the investment community as well. And, again, the panel represented here, there are so many of these, young companies, young brands and startups coming up with, fantastic ideas to serve, niche, segments. There is a phenomenal amount of, funding, being plowed into this. By last count, I think, there were more than 1,000 plus D2C brands. And I'm sure the moment I've said 1,000, by the end of the day, probably that number would have already been, gone up, right? So I think overall, there is a lot of great things happening. Within that, there are, I think, 3 or 4 segments which are seeing a lot more traction than the rest of the segments. Fashion, accessories, consumer electronics, FMCG, and of course, within FMCG, beauty and wellness, health, food and beverages, apparel, footwear. I think, these are all segments that are seeing, tremendous amount of, growth. So I think, that's the sort of the response to your first part. The second part, in terms of the building blocks, I won't go into a lot of detail, but I want to set the stage. Many times, I think, the misconception that we see is that D2C is equated to having a e-commerce website, which, I personally believe is, not really the right thing. Having an e-commerce site is definitely one component of it, but that is not the only thing that you will require if you want to really establish yourself as a premier, D2C brand. And I'll just point out a few of those, building blocks that we are seeing from a technology perspective. Obviously, there is the front end, the shopping platform, so to speak, the integration capabilities that need to exist to bring data into the platform from various sources. Having a robust, data architecture is going to be important, because you will be collecting a lot of data. You will need to know how to analyze that and, take business decisions, based on what you're seeing. And then the whole backend in terms of, operations, right? Inventory management, warehousing, tying up with third-party logistics providers to deliver your product to the doorstep of, your consumers. Some of these things, really need to be in place. And last but not the least is to have, what I would call as an agile operating model, right? And what I mean by that is to really, operate as a well-oiled machine, all parts of the company coming together, whether it is customer service or marketing or merchandising or pricing or the back-end supply chain teams. All of them have to work, in unison, because at the end of the day, that is what is going to deliver a great experience to consumers. And for me, at the end of the day, that's what is really important, right? You're going to have lots of competition, probably, many of them selling similar products. But if you are able to deliver a great experience, that can help you to, stand out in a very crowded market, right? So that's basically, the broad contours of, the architecture, from that standpoint. Back to you, Apal. Yeah.
I think wonderful insight, Sridhar, and the building blocks that you highlighted. We hope to discuss them in detail in the discussion today.
Sure.
Before we move on to the architecture, Juhi, I want to get your insights here. Marico has been building very aggressively on its D2C. You have some wonderful acquisitions in the kitty now. As a company which has a significant presence in GT, MT, online, across, I can say across all key channels, what benefit does D2C actually offer to consumers and also to brands in terms of knowing your customer better?
So yeah, like you rightly said, it does merit both the brand, that is us as a corporate, as well as the consumer. For us, obviously, it's not just basically, let's say, cutting down the middlemen, but it also provides a platform wherein we can understand who our consumer is, which in otherwise, for example, traditional world or via e-commerce enabler, we would not understand who the final consumer is, who's buying the product and using it in certain manner. Secondly, it also gives platform to engage with them, that the brand is directly reaching out to them, not just with offers but also with opportunities to, in a way, talk to them, both sides. And over and above that, I think the most important thing, and which is why most of the large corporates right now have started investing in DTC, is the power of data. Because for us, it's in a way truly a house of brands that we have, not just the D2C brands but also the large brands that we have. And if we were to look at for example, a consumer who's a homemaker or somebody who's going to college, we actually touch many facets of her life through various products that we have. So a live-on consumer may also be a Just Herb consumer, may also be using Fitify, and so on and so forth. And similarly, a Beardo consumer may also be a Fitify consumer, may also be using some Set Wet, and probably also buying Saffola oil and things like that, right? And like, which in another world where D2C data did not exist, I mean, you couldn't have connected that dot. So I think that is the most powerful reason why that is there. For consumer, what it gives is, I think the most valuable thing is trust, because they are directly buying from the brand, so there is no way that it's fake or like all of that. And that then it opens up a channel to have a two-way dialogue, to say that okay, I like your brand because of this, or I'm moving away because of this. And lastly, obviously, because in India a large portion of people are deal seekers, so they are also on hunt of discount sometimes. So that also ends up being a better manner channel with them. So I think those are the reasons why consumer is preferring D2C and brands are preferring D2C. Yeah.
Okay. So, a quick follow-up on what you highlighted, Juhi, for a traditional company like Marico, and now that you have this big D2C arm setting up, how has been your journey with data? Because we know traditionally, capturing data in GT has not been easy. So how are you leveraging the learnings from the D2C side of it and applying in the core business and vice versa?
So what we have done is that one is obviously this whole data segmentation has led to understanding that particular brand's consumer in a better manner. But also we have started doing some bit of test and learn by using that data for another brand, another D2C brand to start with, and say that okay, these particular brands have good overlap between each other. Apart from that, what we also did is that each of our large brand wrote definition of cohorts, that possibly these are possible insights and pain point or the tension point that our brand could solve. So for example, live on, which gives sallow finish hair, one of the tension point was that young mom do not have time to go to salon, and hence they are using live on. And that's when we realized that there is a good overlap with, for example, a Just Herb and other brands. And we started trying some of the cohorts of signals of young mothers to try on that if this particular cohorts work very well for overall advertising lookalike cohorts for live on. And that's how we started sharpening our media efficiencies in overall scheme of things. Secondly, what we have also started doing is there are certain partners that we have identified who will help us do data enrichment over a period of time. So let's say there are some data fields that are available only for 20% of our base or 10% of our base. One is there is an approximation that we are doing to fulfill it for to the tune of 75 to 80% of the base. But also, can we acquire more field set for this consumer? Or maybe we could incentivize this particular consumer to come forward and fill that particular data by themselves, or capture signals on digital to identify those particular fields. So that enrichment exercise is going on. And lastly, I believe that loyalty is here to stay, and a very powerful, strong loyalty program at a overall Marico level is something that will power our future of data, as well as better retention or lower acquisition costs for consumers. So that's basically our journey right now.
Wonderful. I think some great insights there, Juhi. Thank you for that. Before we talk in detail about leveraging data in a D2C brand's journey, Sudeep, I want to get a comment from you. If we look at your journey, you have worked with certain online companies which have sort of played a role in disrupting the space, right? So from that, from having lived that journey, how do you differentiate D2C today from e-commerce, which a lot of people tend to confuse? And how has that learning helped you shape your strategy of growth at Wow?
So, like multiple questions in that question, Pallavi. One is like the core difference between D2C and D2C brands and other plays. The other is how is D2C in itself different from e-commerce. I'll probably take the second one first. Uh, see, e-commerce is a platform play, right? Which means that when you have a basket to shop as a consumer, you go to an e-commerce site, a marketplace, so to speak, which is then giving you a basket of products, multiple brands, could be across categories, etc. Whereas D2C brands so far in India have evolved in a fashion which are largely a single brand play, single brand, single category play, right? So the advantage, like both have their own pros and cons. Honestly, we can't really say that hey, D2C is a D2C site is a better business model versus a marketplace. Both have their own pros and cons. I'll talk about the pros of D2C, right? One of the key pro for D2C, and this is from a consumer perspective, is that you get a good curation of things, right? If you have to, uh, if I like a particular brand and I have to look for all the products of that brand, right? Then D2C is a place where you can come and really get all the offerings together, and maybe some new offerings as well, which are not present on marketplaces or on e-commerce sites. The discovery becomes really difficult and tricky on multi-brand stores or e-commerce stores, so to speak. So on D2C, one is discovery is easy. Uh, Second key differentiator is obviously authenticity. When guarantee, like consumers have this trust because the brand owners are selling directly on D2C, unlike a marketplace where there are multiple sellers. So that trust factor comes in. Third, from a consumer perspective, is also usually better incentives to shop from D2C, right? They could be in the form of discounts, they could be in the form of free gifts, which is a big driver, right? E-commerce doesn't play on that, right? So uh, I differentiate the two in two fashions. Like I think that e-commerce might provide you more value for the brand, more discount for the brand, but overall value that you get on D2C site is generally better because you get free products, you get cashbacks, you get loyalty club memberships, you get samples, you get so many things along with specific curation of objects. So that's one core differentiator, so to speak, from a consumer perspective, right? From brand owners perspective, we're discussing where we get a lot of consumer data which helps us customize the offerings for customers, get early reviews on products, etc., etc. E-commerce for a brand owner is a black box, right? You put the product, it sells, you don't know who's buying, uh, what's the repeat pattern, and so on and so forth. On D2C, all of those things are available with you. The challenge today lies in how do you leverage the insights enough to actually make the experience uh, worth it for the consumer. Yeah.
Okay, I think interesting insights there, Sudeep. And you highlighted a key issue that brands face on how to use what the consumer is telling to shape the strategy further. Jatan, I want to come to you. An extension to what Sudeep said. You work in a category which is traditional FMCG, right? And you're competing with the giants in that space. How did your initial strategy with data to enter into a closed category like this look like? How did you make sense of the market?
Sure, Pallavi. And I think it's a very relevant question for anyone who's planning to start a brand or a business in any category whatsoever. In our case, like you rightly mentioned, fortunately or unfortunately, we operate in a category where there are, it's a very oligoplastic kind of a market, right? There are multiple large players and there are hardly any young insurgent brands in the category. So when we were starting out, of course, we first identified what is the problem that we want to solve for. And is there a problem big enough that exists that we would want to solve for next a decade or two of our lifetime, right? Once that got identified basis what was available in the market, what our personal oral health and oral hygiene looked like, I think the next step that we did was we spoke to about 400 odd people who we identified as part of our target cohort, right? And these people were part of our target cohort does not mean that they were very similarly in demographic, right? These were people across different age groups, different cities, different income brackets to just get more qualitative and quantitative insights on what should we be doing, what their current consumption looks like, how what kind of products do they buy, where do they buy it from, how price sensitive are they when it comes to oral care products, how many of these consumers use a electric toothbrush or they don't use a electric toothbrush. So these were like very detailed 30-minute 30 to 40-minute video conversations that we had with about 400 odd people, right? And this in the hindsight looks very fruitful exercise that we did. But when we were doing it, very candidly speaking, we were also getting very restless. Okay, hey, we have done 40, we have done 50, maybe this is enough. But we were glad that we were able to, walk the distance and, do the grind of those 400 conversations between the two of us, me and my co-founder. And we realized that the data pool that we have collected, right? The different opinions and insights that we have from very different set of people helped us, you know, helped us sort of form our initial set of strategy. What should we be doing? How should we be doing it? Where should we be selling it? What kind of product should we start with, right? So I'll give you a very realistic example. When we spoke to people, most of the people were fairly good from a income standpoint, right? They were like, I would say anywhere north of 10 lakhs annually, and they could afford an electric toothbrush. They were not buying an electric toothbrush because there was a lack of awareness, right? They didn't know what was the difference between an electric toothbrush and a manual toothbrush and why they should buy it. However, they were using a toothpaste, and we spoke to them to understand, okay, hey, what would make them change their toothpaste? And they would say nothing. They won't change their toothpaste irrespective whatever happens, right? But when we ask them, would they change or would they upgrade to a better toothbrush? Why not, right? Because toothbrush is something that's not, well, it's not very personal, right? Of course, toothpaste is personal because you are used to a certain texture, certain taste, certain flavor profile, certain form factor. But toothbrush, they were like a lot more open to. The second question was, are they comfortable buying something that's north of 1,000 rupees and will last them, 2-3 years, right? They said, yes, why not? If the proposition is interesting, we can buy it. But the next question was that they would want to understand more about the product before they buy it, right? And it platform like, let me sort of name it, whether that's a Flipkart or an Amazon or a Myntra, does not give you an opportunity to learn more about the product in a more personal way, right? The only thing that you can do it, is read the reviews, understand the feedback, read the product description, make the decision whether you want to buy it or not, right? Of course, there's an option to return the product, but there's no assisted service on a WhatsApp or a telephone or an email when you're making a purchase decision on an Amazon or a Flipkart, which sort of which gave us the insight that if we want to start selling an electric toothbrush, we want to start with our own website where we can provide that pre and post sales customer support, customer experience, so that the people who are buying into the proposition are fully satisfied. And the reason we started out with the electric toothbrush because we clearly identified these people are willing to upgrade. They don't have an avenue to upgrade. They don't have the awareness to upgrade. So if we come out with a product that really amazes them, they should be willing to give it a try. Out of 100 people, maybe 10 people will give it a try, and that's good enough to start with, right? Because you're not going after the entire India. You're going after a very small cohort when you start out because you want to validate your own thesis. You want to validate your own idea. So I think that is the kind of initial data that we worked on. Of course, looked at the market size, looked at what kind of products are available, looked at what kind of price points would make sense. All those insights we catered through generic market research and research on platforms like Amazon, Flipkart. But apart from that, I very strongly say that having those conversations really shaped up our thought process on what should we be doing and how should we be doing it.
Wonderful. I think that was a very honest answer, Jitin. Thank you for that. Malini, an extension to what Jatin highlighted. I remember our last conversation and you talked about the role of data in product development. If you can delve a little in detail on your strategy in this space, especially as a skincare brand, and talking to the customer and capturing data to differentiate yourself in the product development stage itself. I mean, how challenging is it? And what are the metrics that you looked at in this process?
Right. Yeah. So, yeah, I think in our last discussion, we've actually I did talk about how, we are actually introducing data in the entire new product development process. So I think as an extension of what actually Jatin had mentioned, right? Like what it is actually giving us or is a better understanding of the consumer and the consumer patterns and behaviors. So I would say that, when your touch and feel is limited because you're actually selling online, right? And an offline if the product is present on the shelf, you actually use the product to try and test it on your skin, how it feels, what's the texture like, those kind of things you actually need to bring into the product, before it even reaches the consumer, because that's the kind of convincing you need to do when you're selling online. That first moment of truth, which used to happen on a retail shelf in a retail store, has to has to happen, or rather I would say should ideally be included in the product for the consumer to feel satisfied. Otherwise, there's a lot of dissatisfaction with respect to the consumer. So I think what data is helping us is segment these consumers very into very minute details. Like, so I was working earlier with P&G and Kraft Heinz. There, what we used to talk about is consumer segmentation, like, socioeconomic classification. But right now, the kind of cohorts we are talking about is like, what is the texture would a consumer like, to how much hair is left on the head of the consumer. That's kind of the power of data that we have and that we know about the consumer. So now that we know all of these, we can actually make better products. So for us specifically, we use both publicly available data as well as, of course, the data we gather from our consumer interviews or calls. So the publicly available data which we use a lot with respect to product development is a lot of Google keyword trends, because how the trends are moving shows the interest of where the products are, or rather the interest of consumers with respect to the products, how international products are picking up, and what are the trends we see that can be transferred from international countries into India. And then, of course, I think like the keywords, even on marketplaces, they're equally valuable. Like, though we're talking about D2C, so there's also some data available over there, which is absolutely important, which we look at. And I think the second biggest thing is about the reviews. So that reviews that are available publicly on multiple marketplaces as well as your website, crunching them, and you can understand where which part is giving a good customer satisfaction and which part is actually not giving. How important is something for a consumer, to the minute detail of probably a smell is irking them to not buy the product anymore, to the feel of it, right? So that's what we do. And then we take all this data and then kind of try to marry it with the consumer focus groups or the interviews which we do with the consumers, which is more of a private set of data which only we have access to. And because actually there's a lot of data in the public domain which most brands around kind of be using the same data. And I think the proprietorship would be the internal data which you have from your own consumers. And that's when we come up with what should the concept of the product be. So because we are able to get to such kind of a minor detail, we are usually getting products right in the first go, if not a lot more, but at least equivalent amount of times, which probably a bigger FMCG brand would be getting. Because for an FMCG brand, the entire product development cycle, the testing and everything is like a 2.5 year process, with multiple like dollars spent and multiple amount of consumers involved. So I think as a smaller D2C brand, we are able to do this with the help of data in a shorter interval of time, and being equally successful that way. So that is what I would look at it. Like an example would basically be that we try to launch a sunscreen in the market, and we kind of understood that, okay, there is this specific region where there is not happy with most available sunscreens in the market, because most sunscreens are oily or greasy in texture, and they needed something more matte finish. So we took this insight because we got it from data, and we actually launched a very matte sort of a sunscreen, and we saw that that product has been pretty successful in the market, and successful in the regions where we thought it would be successful for sure. So that's exactly how I think we are using data to develop better products and more I would say personalized I wouldn't call it personalized specifically, but more customizable products to a consumer set. So that's basically how we are using data today, is what I would say.
Wonderful. I think that was a wonderful answer, Malini. Thank you for that. Dheeraj, I want to come to you. For a brand operating in the baby care space, I mean, you've got a good product. You've got data, right? And you're strategizing accordingly to cater to your consumers. Is there a strategy that is formulated to form an emotional connect with the customer as well? Because as a customer, I believe in your category that emotional connection becomes very crucial, and that maybe drives brand loyalty. Is that a trend that you see? And if you can delve into your strategy a bit.
So I think, as you rightly said, in our case, obviously the emotional connect is very important, and it is at the high end, and the stakes are very high, because you are not buying only for you. It is you are buying for you are taking decision for somebody whom you love the most and care the most. And the person, the one that is going to use the product, is at a stage where he or she would not be able to tell you also whether I'm comfortable with the product or not. So then you need to follow the gestures in order to understand that. So I think data, in our case, we definitely know that at what level the customer is. Suppose with our data we come to know that what size somebody has bought it, or the somebody has bought a langote, or what kind of a diaper, for what age bracket somebody has bought a diaper for, or a langote, or something. That's why we are being able to gauge that what kind of a emotional phase that the parent must be going through. Um, and I think that helps us a lot by drafting the type of retention comms that we do. As Marley was sharing about the cohorts, that I think one of the major, for us to build up the cohort, to build up journeys, or doing any kind of a comms around it, it becomes very helpful for us. Second one is, I would stress upon the way we are being able to cross sell and upsell the products. That also becomes very important by going deep into the data, and by building up that kind of emotional connect, that or maybe some sort of RFQ kind of a thing, that since you are into, then the communication becomes totally different. We are going with the authority by saying that you are so and so, and then you must be facing so and so issues, and this is the solution for that. Whether it's a rashes, or whether it's something that person is going for a sleepless nights, or something. So I think data is the key, and I always say to everybody that present days, when we talk of performance marketing and intentional marketing, or any kind of a marketing, is 70% is data, is data, and 20 to 30% is marketing. So I think with data we are being able to develop very big connect, and from my past experience of edtech, skincare, and apparels, I think it happens to across. It's not about that we are into baby category and we are being able to develop some emotional connect to that. I think skincare uses it perfectly well by building up the connect out there, and understanding the psyche of the customers with the type of color combinations that person is buying, as Martin said, about the textures, uh, uh, and about the regional imbalances, and then what is good in north may not be good in south, or maybe somewhere where there is a rainy season out there. So again, in our case also, we do a lot of product mix, and the comms we design based the data. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you for that, Dheeraj. Sridhar, I want to come to you again with a very basic question here. We talked about the applications of data in the journey of a D2C brand, but I mean, making sense of this data, I believe it's a big challenge, because if I'm right, a large part of it is unstructured. So, how do players like Salesforce help brands make sense of this data and again use them to strategize and serve the customers better?
Sure, sure. Yeah, first of all, I think the DTC platform offers, plenty of opportunities for you to collect data, right? About various kinds of things about consumer behavior, as well as, their purchase history. And you can then marry that up with, CRM kind of data that you might already have. Things like, point of sale data, loyalty data, those kinds of things, they're all ultimately going to contribute to building a richer profile of, who your consumers are. But as you said, the challenge is that, at least, from my experience, when I talk to a lot of, brands, this data exists, in various, silos, within the organization, right? So the first challenge for them is to really consolidate all of this and, put it into some sort of unified or a harmonized, format, if I may call it that, right? So that is the first challenge. Once you are able to unify the data and create, what, we call as a golden record of the customer, right? Because, you may have a Twitter account, you may be on Facebook, you could have a completely different username on Insta, for example, and so on and so forth. But ultimately, you are the same Pallavi, Goel, right? So once I'm able to harmonize it, I will be able to create a golden record of, who Pallavi is, right? And then essentially, as you come to my websites or go to my stores or any of my other, properties, if there is a way for me to, track that, I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then collect all that, information and intelligence, and, plow it back into that, golden record, right? So over a period of time, I'm going to have a very, rich profile of who you are, what you've been buying, what has been your behavior, in terms of shopping, what are the kinds of products that you've been interested in, what have you been browsing, what channels do you prefer, things like that, right? Once I have that, sort of intelligence, so to speak, then I'm able to better target you, right? Because I know who you are, in a much better manner, and therefore I can execute marketing campaigns, or, come up with actually even highly personalized, offers that are very specific to you as an individual, right? So the holy grail, of course, is to serve what we call as a market of one, right? And I want to treat you as an individual. You are a very unique person. You have your own, unique sets of desires and needs and things like that. And I don't want to treat you and put you in a bucket of, people who belong to the age of, X and Y, and who live in a metro like Mumbai, and so on and so forth, right? Those are very broad aggregate level cohorts. And I think, we are moving into an age where I think data can give you that level of, granularity in terms of the insights. And based on those insights, I will be able to, deliver, a better, marketing campaign, which of course you as a consumer will say, well, they recognize me as a person, right? Not as just as a customer ID number 1234. And that has a lot of obvious benefits for you. But from a company's perspective, also, it has a lot of benefits, in the sense that this really helps you to put your marketing dollars to a lot more effective use, right? And over a period of time, with constant learning, with every interaction and with every SMS that you opened or didn't open, etc., I'm going to make, certain decisions, based on that. And therefore, I'm able to use my marketing dollars a lot more effectively, right? So I think that's the sort of the benefit technology can deliver. But again, from a solutions perspective, there are all kinds of capabilities, underneath the hood, in terms of, ingesting the data, storing that in a single repository, being able to segment them at a very granular level, and then, of course, execute marketing campaigns. And also, at the end of the day, being able to measure the results, as I said, so that you're really able to, close the loop, completely. And then, it's a sort of a virtuous cycle, right? The more you learn, the better you get, and the better you get, the more you learn. So that's the way, I would say, from a technology flywheel perspective, that's what, we would do.
Wonderful. I think very, very important insights there, Sridhar. Thank you for that. I want to shift gears of our conversation to a very important trend in retail, or as I like to call it, it's the word of the decade in the retail industry, which is omni-channel. And I want to come to you, Vivek, to first understand if you can give us a sense of how wide in terms of channels is your distribution currently, especially when you house three different brands, and how are you integrating them? Does that integration happen simultaneously, or do you, work separately across different channels? If you can walk us through the journey.
Sure, Pallavi. And I feel while both sides of the approach were spoken about earlier, which is going with your own direct e-commerce store directly to the consumer, and then also about being present in the e-commerce, and then an even bigger extension would be being present in offline. I and our team here fall very, very strongly on the side of being very, very directly involved with the customers. I feel that that's where the core of D2C began with. That's the edge that all of us have over any old age brands or any very, very seller focused approach that some businesses have. So that's what we do. Currently, we are entirely online, and majority, a lot more than majority, is on our own e-commerce stores itself. We have presence on marketplaces as well, and over time we will have a presence on offline as well. We have a little bit of that right now, but we're very clear that for a very vertical, sharp player, and especially the kind of approach that we have, while it is 3 brands, each of these 3 brands are very vertically sharp. So one is around curly hair care, so just a bunch of 5 products that's valid for everybody who wants to take care of their curly hair. Similarly, one is around hair color, fashionable, very vibrant hair colors, and the third is around functional beauty. So very, very vertical in that sense, and that's where I feel a deep involvement with the consumer is a lot more important to us than a width of reach. If we are speaking to a curly hair consumer, there's a lot more starting with awareness, starting with routines, starting with why a lot of the curly hair community is also very recently discovering the confidence with which they can sport their curly hair. Most of their life they've been asked to suppress it. So all of that kind of justice is only possible when you're dealing very directly with the consumer. So let's say a color enthusiast wants to see a different hair color style every day and wants to get inspired from that. So that's where we make the core of our play. Yes, omni-channel is important, and we are present on e-commerce, but I feel that's more of an extension and spillover from what we do on our own platforms directly with the consumer. And when it comes to loyalty, I don't think loyalty is going to be lost in being present in the offline or in being present in the e-commerce space. It's just that you won't have a direct channel of communication. So a loyal consumer will continue to be loyal to you, but now you've lost a little bit of that direct touch to learn from them and to talk to them, and does get more deeply involved in providing them a solution, which is over and above anything else that anybody else offers.
You spoke about loyalty here, Vivek. While the brand is not omni-channel currently, from an industry perspective, does having an omni-channel approach and maybe providing your one customer the same experience across channels, does it have a direct impact on how long that customer stays with you?
My sense is for a customer who's already discovered you, who's already learned about you, I'm talking about vertical niche brands first, and then let's talk about the horizontal scenarios as well. So for a vertical niche brand like a hair color brand or a curly hair brand, once a customer has discovered you and knows you, then of course that behavior can be extended and they can continue to purchase you from an e-commerce or from an offline space. But for themes that are very sharp and deep as this, I don't think the journey will start the other way around. If I go to, let's say, an Amazon or a Nykaa today, there are no curly hair. There's very little, historically, there's been very little curly hair offering anywhere in the offline or the online space. So there are no customers there already. So the journey then, hence for our brands like us, starts here, extends to there. So there is no loss as such, but yes, it'll make sense to have the loyalty begin on your store and then go forward to wherever it has to be. I hope that answers at least a part of that question.
Great. Thank you so much, Vivek, for that. Amit, I want to come to you, and this question stems from a recent announcement by Rhino Veda, where the company raised funds, and I remember this snippet that one of the key areas where the company plans to use the money is for offline expansion, right? So, as a D2C brand, which is, planning to go offline, how, if you can share some learnings in this journey and key factors where every brand should keep in mind before embarking on an offline journey.
Thanks, Pallavi. So, Pallavi, I believe that offline expansion gives a broader reach to every brand. However, before a brand decides, the question is that when should a brand decides to go offline, right? I believe that every brand should have a clear metric and goal in mind before they plan to go offline. For example, if I talk about Gynoveda, when we decided to go offline, we saw a clear opportunity of people who wanted to talk to a doctor. If I tell you more about Gynoveda, we have Ayurvedic medicines for menstrual disorders and female infertility. Okay, so the only process or the only procedure that Indian women have to conceive is IVF IUI. IVF is clearly an offline business, right? There is no online uh, system where people can enroll for IVF, they can consult a doctor, they have to go to an offline clinic. So when we discovered that there are a lot of women are willing to talk to a doctor or meet a doctor in person, that's when we decided to go offline. Over to you, Pan.
Okay, got that, Amit. Sudeep, I want to get a comment from you here. As a brand which has done both, I mean, you've been online, you are omni-channel now. What are some key mistakes that D2C brands make in this early journey?
Oh, there are many. I'll just probably put the key ones, right? So one is to understand, why the consumer would understanding the consumer actually is a big one. It's a like people don't really understand, or a lot of brands don't talk to consumers uh, to really understand what their pain points are and then try to solve it. Like one part is making the product, the second part is selling it, right? So a lot of times I've seen brands which are discounted, for example, discounted more on an Amazon versus their own sites because of the how the financials typically work. Right now, while it's a P&L call, but from a consumer perspective, it's an extremely uh, non-insightful thing to really pay extra for something on a D2C site, for example, right? So some of these things like keep happening in the industry over and over, where you start prioritizing, other marketplaces over your own D2C, right? Sometimes you discount so heavily on D2C, which impacts your retail, for example. So, for example, there's a retail channel that also needs to be taken care of, but you are continuously running BOGO sales, for example, right? Then channel starts buying from you directly. So the whole effort for the other channel, which is the offline channel, that suffers. So some of these nuances in the interplay between the three channels, is one part of it, right? Sometimes what happens is that brands offer only limited SKUs for managing ease of inventory, etc., across all channels. The customer profile is different across each channels, right? So understanding what the customer wants, like for example, like there could be possibly a, like how we see in offline, right? In a big bazaar, for example, on an erstwhile big bazaar, you see multi packs being sold, whereas in a neighborhood kirana you saw single packs being sold, right? The same uh, differentiations can come on the online channels as well, offline as well, right? So another mistake is how do you kind of like brands don't really make those differentiations, right? Third is the price points typically, right? Sometimes the buyer profile of offline versus buyer profile of online is different, right? Now launching a very cheap product online would mean that your P&L will not make sense because your margins are deteriorated, but launching a very expensive product will mean your GT will not fire, right? So how do you balance it out essentially, right? So some of these nuances are nuances that needs to be taken care of on the pricing side, for example, right? Then there are things on data, right? We all talked about data, but like I have been uh, at Wow for about a year, and I'm really trying to make sense of data still. It's complex. Like in a brand like in a single channel brand like a Swiggy, for example, all the consumer data is available with you. In a multi-channel brand, getting the data is difficult because consumer can buy offline, then come on your site and then go on an online platform and buy, or buy on your site, then go to e-commerce and come back to your site, or go to GT to buy, for example, right? So it's really tricky to make sense of it and then put it to good use, right? In the D2C universe, this is my observation, and without any offense to any of the panelists present here, I think we are only at like 5-10% of the journey where we are actually utilizing the data well enough, right? So that's another big problem. While data is the buzzword, are we using it well enough? Are we capable both in terms of tools being available in the market and even internal teams who can actually handle the data and actually surface things which are great for the consumer, right? So that's another thing basically.
Wonderful. I think that's a very important point to be noted. But I mean, just an extension to the data part that you highlighted. As a mid-sized company, do you believe is it fair for it should be a priority for companies to invest in in-house data teams, or is it necessary to onboard partners? What should be the right approach for a company?
Pallavi, there's no one size fits all answer to this question, right? Like depending on the size and the stage you are at, right? If you're just starting out right now, for example, like then don't invest in anything. Put your product on online on your site, put your product on marketplace, see where it goes, then invest in data capabilities. If you're at a different stage, which is our stage of journey, where you really need to unlock newer avenues to grow, really need to understand the consumer, really need to put the right kind of offering in front of the consumer, divided by cohorts, be more efficient, of course you'll need data, right? So everyone needs data for sure, but how much to invest behind it at what stage depends on the stage of the organization, I would say. Like a very early stage company going heads on into data would be probably not doing justice to the business, but a late stage company not doing so will be again not right.
Wonderful. Thank you for that, Sudeep. Sridhar, your comment on this.
Yeah, no, I just raised my hand because of what Sudeep just said, and I couldn't agree more with him. I think the problem is, we have plenty of data, but the question that he asked, are we really using it effectively? I think is a great question. And I kind of, tend to agree with them, at least based on my own experiences working with a lot of brands. While data is available, but I don't think it's being put to effective use. And again, I highlighted some of the challenges earlier on in my last response. But also, I think a culture of data literacy also needs to be set up within organizations, right? Everybody thinks that technology will do some magic and you press a button and everything will happen, while it is partly true because I come from a technology company. But jokes apart, ultimately you need to ask the right questions of the data, right? um, and you need to have a good sense of what the data is trying to tell you, spot patterns. Of course, there's a lot of advancements happening in technology as well, right? With the generative AI and so on and so forth, there is phenomenal capabilities are available for you to discern patterns and look at anomalies and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, I think it does boil down to a human being asking pertinent questions, somebody who has a pulse on what the business really needs, what do their consumers want, right? This is not something that a computer can come up automatically, and that is where I think the human ingenuity and creativity is going to be very effective. But also having that sort of data literacy culture, and the sort of the top down leadership should be saying that I want you to make decisions based on data, right? Not just simply purely on gut. And if the culture is established, then I think we will be able to make a lot of progress. Because data by itself is not going to do much for you. It will give you the data in the format that can be queried and things like that. At least in Salesforce, we believe that we should be democratizing access to data. It should not belong to a bunch of geeks or data scientists sitting in headquarters. We should be making the data available to the rank and file of the organization, down to the shop floor, to the store associate, to the contact center associate, and so on and so forth. But give it to them in a manner that they can consume it. Don't expect them to be a data scientist to run some complex, reports or algorithms to get something out of it. But as long as that, data is given to them in a way that they can make decisions, and are you empowering them to make decisions, based on what they're seeing, right? Some of these things I think will go a long way in improving that number.
Wonderful. I think your comment on human intelligence, it's all the more important considering the hype around AI and LLMs that we have today. I quickly want to understand and get a comment from Jatin here. Jatin, we have Jatin, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Hi, Jatin. So, we were talking about an omni-channel approach. As a young brand in the industry, what are your plans on going omni-channel or going offline per se, and key roadblocks that you see in this journey?
Sure. So, from a plans perspective, from day zero, we've been very bullish about building an omni-channel brand, and we knew that in our category, majority of buying happens offline compared to offline, right? So, for example, if in beauty and personal care, like hypothetically speaking, if the ratio is 90 to 10, where 90% of purchasing is happening offline and 10% is happening online, in oral care category specifically, that's 97 to 3, right? 97% of the categories online and 97% of the categories offline, and only 3% is online, right? So we knew that at some point in time, we'll have to go omni-channel, we have to enter offline retail. Now the question is, when do we enter? But since we've been very, very bullish and we believe that in order to build a fairly large brand that can impact the life of consumers, we'll have to be present offline. We started doing some very small scale pilots back in mid of last year, summer of last year, May of June. We started out with one store. We were only present in one store in Gurgaon, which we felt was going to be the marquee store for us in terms of catering to the right set of audience, catering to the right set of people. We were only available in that store for the first 6 months. We did a lot of trials, a lot of testing, learned in that one store, what does it take to really move your product from a retail counter, right? Because the actual validation is when your products are being sold from the retailer, not when you are selling to the retailer, right? That is where the proof of the pudding is. So we did all those experiments, learned a lot, and that's when we started fully going offline retail. Today, we are present at about 400 odd retail counters, primarily in Delhi NCR, and we are seeing fairly good success in this small scale pilot that we are doing. In terms of roadblocks, I think the first and foremost roadblock is that going omni-channel or going offline is very expensive, right? So you have to be like 200% sure about the product, the price point, the positioning that you're going to enter with. Because unlike online, where you can A/B test a lot of things and you have a website and you can make a product live and see whether that works or not, offline you don't get so many chances. So you have to really have product market fit before you can start tapping into offline world. That is one. Second, in offline you can't really run performance marketing, but the cost of going offline is very significant, right? And you have to make that investment upfront. Unlike online, where you're trying to drive business through performance marketing, you can A/B test. If a campaign is not working, you can stop that campaign and analyze the results of it. You can analyze what the CPM is, you can analyze what the CPC is, we can analyze what the CTR is, etc., etc. But offline, you have to front load some of the investments, right? So if you're going to start with a large retailer, one investment will be, the inventory that you'll have to deploy at the stores, right? If it does not get sold, of course, that inventory won't be sellable elsewhere because you'll give it the due time for it to sort of sell out. Second is you have to negotiate or, mark out a certain expenditure with respect to visibility and marketing, right? Because the retailer also wants to see what are you going to do at your end to make the product move, right? Are you going to invest in a dedicated visibility? Are you going to invest in a beauty advisor who's going to interact with the customers that visit that retail store, and try and sort of create more brand awareness, try and sort of tell them what your brand is about, why they should buy it, why they should consider it, etc., etc. So I think these are fundamentally the large roadblocks. More or less, it's about having the conviction that your product can sell offline. It has well, there is a gap in the offline market and there is a need for a product like yours in the offline market. And the second large roadblock is, figuring out the capital and the expense part of it, right? Because well, not that I'm a seasoned professional who has done offline over and over again, but the little bit of wisdom that I have is that when you go offline, you have to just you have to be very patient, right? Because you don't start seeing results very, very quickly. You have to sort of give it a year or 18 odd months to start really seeing the domino effect or the exponential effect in that vertical of your business, right? So for the first 12 to 18 months, you have to you have to believe in yourself and you have to invest, right? And 12 to 18 months down the line is when you start seeing results. So I think being patient is also a big roadblock, because a lot of digital entrepreneurs or a lot of digital first consumer brands uh, are in the habit of seeing results and tracking results and monitoring results very instantly. So I think that is what the by and large roadblock is, what we feel. Happy to sort of take inputs or hear from someone else as well who's done this before, and we'll also learn from them.
Sure, I think that's a very honest answer, Jatan, again, and spoken like a true founder, I must say. Dheeraj, I want to come to you, and there's a question from our audience, which I believe sort of very rightly fits in the topic that we're discussing right now, which is how does marketing spend across offline take place? Metrics are really hard to measure. What would be your comment on that?
I think I will just want to take just to extend to what Jatin was saying, that how we decide upon going offline. So we also 98% of the business is typically online for us also. Only a couple, it's a very small business that we do offline. So so since offline is more about in a particular area, so it's a very, very geographical centric thing that is there. And that is there for anything you can talk about GTMT or something. So what we did that we again look back to our data and see that from where which are the pin codes, which are the areas from where we are getting the maximum of the orders out there. So that means that some sort of awareness is there for that, and as a counter to me, the person always want to sell something which is selling very fast, and the transaction is happening. He doesn't want to hold the inventory at the counter. So I think, and that's how we start working it on. And in our case, obviously, touch and feel becomes more important to the customer. But again, all those insights, what to do, when to do, as Vivek rightly said, should be the right time when you want to venture into the offline piece. We also mentioned but again, taking very again baby steps to that, backed by the data intelligence that we bring on the table, and again to be very, very patient out here with the approach. So that's how we manage. And to answer your thing about marketing spends to be there, so I think first of all, it takes time, as Jatin was also saying, that you need to be patient for a year or so to see some sort of a thing. So one, definitely you need to be patient to understand and seek that whatever the money that you are spending out there. So there are two types of spends that are happening in the offline space. One will be the branding that you will be doing, and second one is that if you are not a high advertised brand, then knocking the doors of the counters or the distributors or whomsoever you want to building up your network. That's become the one of the primary costs of you being there. And uh, and then you need to have a playbook around that, as rightly said by Jatin, that they worked on one store, developed a playbook around it, to all those do's and don'ts that are required, and that's how they moved on to that. Again, it all depends on the brand that you have, uh, whether it's a MT first or a GT first brand. Again, is something that you need to figure it out depending on the portfolio that you are managing. Spends definitely whenever we do uh, uh, so I think there we took most of the entrepreneur gut to start with. Where if we start getting queries out of it, if the distributor is asking for reorders, I think in the Indian scenario, I always tell to my team when any offline piece comes out there, uh, that if you are being able to dictate something to your distributor or the retailer, that means that your campaign is working very good for you. And if you are on a receiving end from them, then obviously there is some sort of a gap. Uh, so that is there, and the repeats are there, to see that what kind of a and is your are you getting your repeat orders? Do you see some sort of improvement out there? Maybe not the second or the third order, maybe the fourth or the fifth order. Are you seeing some sort of a improvement? Are you being able to see some sort of a success building up in one of the SKU? Because in GT you will not see that the whole portfolio is selling a lot. You will see that there is one or two SKU that will become your hero SKUs, and that's driving maximum of the business for you. I think, according to me, the spends are basically on the to answer that budgeting part is basically the branding piece is something that you need to take, and second one is a distribution network that you are building for yourselves.
Okay. Thank you so much for that, Dheeraj. Malini, I want to come to you and get your comment on another very important trend in the entire D2C and, in fact, retail space, which is personalization. Right. So, whenever we talk about personalization, there's one key aspect which is personalized products. But I want to understand from you in a D2C brand's journey, apart from personalizing your product, there are several other aspects where this can be leveraged. If you can share your thoughts on that.
Sure. So I think from a personalization perspective, right? Personalization need not I think, like, this has been a trend that's been there around for a while. But I think where most people have attempted this is like giving personalized products in terms of having your name printed on the packaging, or or like just take a test and see if for a certain hair type or for a certain skin type, this is the final end of the like you do a series of questions and this is the product as such. So I think from a personalization perspective, that's great, but I think what has happened in the past is that most people stuck to the kind of product, as you rightly said, that stuck to the product what they're making. But I think what consumer is looking for is basically something more beyond that. Can you talk to me as you are talking to me in real life? I think that's basically where the personalization bit comes into play. And with the help, especially on D2C, with the help of multiple tools that we have available in the market today, we can actually talk to the consumer. With the help of data, we know or we understand the consumer. So how do we reach out to them? Because I think mostly what we try to do is like reach out to them for offers and marketing. But when they land on your homepage, what products are you showing to them? How are you, once they purchase the product, how are you in touch with them and then service them, ask them how the product experience has been, and if there has been any hiccups, can you help them out in that journey? And then I think the last is basically like the golden metrics which every brand is trying to seek. How do you retain them, right? Because I think retention is not just about how good the product is. It's also about through that journey, how have you handheld them. And I think that's basically what personalization looks as per me, and that's exactly how we are also utilizing it currently, or try to utilize it currently, I would say. So that's exactly how I would be saying, just not at the making of the product, but through the entire touch point and making sure that the consumer is coming back to you. So these are all the touch points where you can personalize to the consumer and talk to them, and have the same warmth as you show in an offline. Can you do that online? Can you, small things like, can you use their name when you are sending a communication to them? rather than saying like, dear consumer. So these are the few things I think, how we are using personalization. But as a lot of panelists have said today, there is so much data, but we are probably just scratching the surface using that data. So, I think there's a lot more that can be done using all this data with respect to personalization.
Okay, wonderful. Amit, an extension of the applications of personalization. How are you leveraging this to tailor your recommendations and on also the content that reaches to your consumer? Because for a category like yours, the content and the information to your consumer, it's very critical in this case.
Yes. Pallavi, in our category, uh, women have different types of disorders because due to different types of deficiencies in their bodies. So we do surveys with our customers, like other panelists said, that data is the fuel for the business. We collect, so my interpretation of data is collecting consumer insights. What are their demographics? Which class do they belong to? Where? What kind of lifestyle or diet do they follow? And what kind of disorders are they facing? Based on this data, we create curated content. We curate content, and then we start sharing it with our customers, which addresses their most frequently asked questions or top of the mind questions. And that's when they have faith in the brand, that the brand will be able to help them treat a specific disorder. And not only they buy, they stay with us for a long amount of time, because we educate them from time to time that treating a disorder will take patience and time, which means that you have to consume this medicine for 6 months or 6 to 12 months. And we keep in contact with them. We do NPAs, we do a lot of surveys in order to collect more information about their daily habits, or at least daily habits that we have recommended if they have if they have introduced those changes into their life. Over to you, Pallavi.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much for that, Amit. And I think great insights shared by everyone. We have a lot of questions in the Q&A section, and I'd like to take some minutes out to get these questions answered. First one for you, Vivek. Reshma is asking that legacy brands have been launching a smaller number of products nowadays, but the product launches from D2C brands is relatively high. So how does a D2C brand decide on the product launch frequency with a relatively less muscle power than legacy companies?
Got it. Awesome. And Reshma, I hope you're building lots of good things, and that's where this question is coming from. The two parts to this question. One, I'll talk about what it means to have a smaller menu brand, and the other is about what's the frequency at which you are able to launch. So just in case the first part was also related to how the bigger and the smaller brands are behaving now. Now, more and more of the success is coming from a smaller set of highly successful products instead of a huge number of a very large category, subcategory kind of width of products. So that's one thing to keep in mind when you're thinking about frequency and number of products, etc. There have been, of course, retail players and also horizontal brands that have been able to build up several hundred product width, but just evaluate whether that makes sense to do a lot of launches in itself or not. And coming to what's happening and why are D2C brands able to bring out products faster than some of the older players, that's true not only for the consumer brands category, but for the entire business universe in total. When you are early in your stage, there are faster decisions. Possibly there's a 5 people team or a 10 people team deciding on what products to launch, and being able to read the consumer data faster, being able to be more intuitive with it or analytical with it, whatever is it, it's turning, it's being turned around much faster than when you were a 5,000 people company or a 10,000 people company, where 20 departments, each of them 100 people strong, have to come into every decision making. So if I have to give you one reason why D2C brands are able to churn out products faster, is just about the stage of the company. And as these D2C brands also will grow and become a 5,000 people company, you will see their speed also slow down. So that first work, and it involves many things. It involves the panel was talking today about being able to read data from Google or marketplaces, and we also spoke about 400 people surveys being conducted around dental, and a lot of research parts become faster because now you're not dependent on a huge machinery to be able to do that. Then a lot of early R&D and product and manufacturing movement become faster. And all of this is now also, earlier a major challenge was that a small brand did not have the resources to be able to produce anything. So if you have to build a website, you may not have a tech team. If you have to build a product, you may not have a manufacturing team. If you have to make a fulfillment happen, you do not have a logistics team. But now there are also enablers everywhere, fantastic enablers. You have great manufacturers, great tech enablers, great logistics, fulfillment, warehousing services, everything. So now that 0 to 1 journey has become very fast. Number one, mentally fast for newer players, and also definitely from a resource wise and physically very fast, because there's lots of ecosystem available today, which I can definitely say was not there even 5 years ago. So in the last 5 years, there's just so many enablers have come in that have made the life easier for everybody. And I'm also an enabler for somebody else. Somebody else is an enabler for me. So it's a very well networked system. But that's my answer on both parts. One is the mental agility of small company versus big company, and the second is just the amount of support available from everywhere.
Wonderful. Thanks, Vivek. I think that was a great answer. Sudeep, here's a question for you. How is Wow Skin Care trying to graduate customers from D2C platforms to offline, or from other marketplaces to D2C platforms?
No, actually, we don't look at it like that. We don't look at it like customers have to move from one place to another place. Uh, the idea is that the customer should be able to purchase the brand wherever the customer is the most comfortable with, right? So going in wherever the product is getting sold, it's a Wow product, right? So the customer buys it from offline, the customer buys it from a marketplace, or the customer buys it from D2C. Ultimately, it's fine. Like as a brand, we don't really, it doesn't matter till then customer is buying the product, right? So that is not the objective. For us to really shape demand in favor of D2C against uh, another channel. If anything, we are very, very cognizant of the cannibalization that any channel might have. Like the example I was mentioning earlier, right? Like a lot of times, in fact, last year when I came in, I realized that, parts of retail was getting cannibalized because there was so much deals and discounts on D2C that some retailers were directly buying from D2C, thereby hampering the effectiveness of the offline efforts, right? So we got some controls in place to say, yeah, like there should be a maximum cap on the amount every customer can buy in an order on D2C, or there could be a maximum cap on the amount of orders a customer can place on D2C. We actually want to proactively segregate each channel because each channel has a role to play in the world, right? uh, Not doing that will only result in our own cannibalization, which we don't really want. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for that, Sudeep. Dheeraj, here's a question for you. For a brand making entry into the consumer market, will e-commerce dilute the brand's identity or help that grow?
No, I think it always help out there, because whenever you are entering into market, so your brand is a newer one. People doesn't know about your brand, doesn't have the confidence on your brand. Whereas when you talk of any established marketplaces in terms of Amazon, Flipkart, or any other one, Smitten or anything. That gives a confidence because people are already buying from something or other. So I think it is always good whenever you are there to put your products out there, so that they don't hesitate. If there is any kind of a hesitation for them to buy your product in the first go, till the time your brand is maybe 6 months down the line, or maybe 1 year down the line, and people will start experience your product. I think it is always being good to put your brand out there, so that that confidence building is there for your brand. And people should, once the person is being convinced, because of lack of confidence, they should not switch on to any other.
Okay, thanks, Dheeraj. Jatin, we have a question for you. How
Sure.
are loyalty programs, rewards, or offers shaping the future of D2C brands when compared to e-commerce?
So how are loyalty programs and rewards shaping up the, could you repeat that, the other part
Yeah,
of the question?
shaping the future of D2C brands in comparison to e-commerce.
Got it. So I think like we've already have spoken a lot about that D2C, it's not about only having a website, it's a relationship, right? That owning the relationship directly with the customer, and it could be through your own website, which is one of the ways to do it, and it could also be through, having your own exclusive retail store, which has also existed for far too long, right? Because I remember being an early member of Shopper Stop, and they would have their Shopper Stop card, which I could sort of get loyalty points on, and whenever I would sort of purchase next, I would get some rewards or the other, right? So I think even in today's day and age, uh, it is sort of very, very important that you continue to engage with your customers in a way, and you continue to provide them more value for money. So what loyalties and rewards do, they are basically providing more value for money to all your customers, so that they can be incentivized to buy directly from you and not from a third party platform, which could be a marketplace, or which could be a multi brand outlet, where you guys where a brand is retailing. So I believe personally, and that's how we also look at it at Perfora, that we are very, like, we want to really scale up business on via our own channels and own media, and that is where loyalty and rewards come into picture. We try and sort of provide more value for money to our customers, people who are directly shopping on our website or any place where we are available, where there's no middleman involved, right? So personally, the thought process has been that, if you continue to incentivize your customers, they will continue to transact more, and that is where you will continue to get more richer insights about your customer behavior, right? So it's not always about running a discount of a certain percentage, or it's not always about running a sale which says, buy two get one, but sometimes it's also about engaging with your customers in a way which is very unconventional. So for example, one of the exercises that we've done here at Perfora is that when people come and buy, we at a certain threshold, beyond a certain purchasing power or the order value they've bought from us over the last 3 to 6 months, we sort of send them the samples of our new products free of cost, right? So that also becomes an exciting thing for them to, okay, hey, this is a smaller sample, this is a soon to be launched product, but since you're part of our cohort and since you're part of our customer base, you have this privilege to try this product before this opens up to the world, right? And even whenever this opens up to the world, we'll also try and sort of send an emailer or a WhatsApp to that curated list of people that, okay, hey, you were one of the people who tried it, you liked it, now if you want to buy the full pack, you can go ahead and buy it at a certain discount, which might not be available when the product is out for the world, right? So I think these are some of the tactics that we have managed to keep our customers excited and our customers loyal to the brand. But of course, we're still scratching the surface. There's a lot more to be done. We have a team that's dedicatedly working to solve the loyalty, rewards, and retention piece, but still early days for us. But that's how we've been looking at it, and we believe that if you want to scale your business via your own D2C or your own platforms, uh, crafting strategies that can keep your customers excited and incentivized to transact more often is going to be a key differentiator in your success or failure.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for that. Amit, a question here on how do you set your target market?
How do you set your
Target market.
So target market is something that cannot be set. It can be identified. You should identify who your target audience is, what's the size of this uh, audiences, and who's your competition, what are their offerings, what's the ASP, and so on. So target market is something that should be identified. And if a good entrepreneur or good owner is very good at identifying target market.
Wonderful. Thanks, Samit. Malini, a final question to you. How is influencer marketing working in the D2C industry? Does it give ROI, or we should only be looking at that as a part of the brand awareness strategy?
Yeah. So I think there are two parts to this question as to how influencers are, I would say, influencing decision-making process. And number two is like, is it at an awareness level or is it at a purchase level? I think that's how the question is, right? So probably I'll just pick the first part of it. So I think influencers are absolutely important in the current ecosystem because India as such used to be a very aspirational sort of an economy, I would say, like let's say 20 years ago, when a film star is probably asking you to buy a product, you would actually want to go buy that product, because I think as an economy, we were very aspirational in nature. However, as we are actually started purchasing online, started seeing reviews coming in, like peer-to-peer reviews, or started seeing people who is relatable to you, talk to you about a specific product, they started making their decisions based on uh, the information that is available, the knowledge that they are actually like gaining from the internet, right? So I say that they have actually moved to a more of a knowledge based sort of an economy. Like, it used to be aspirational when it opened up, and now it is more of a knowledge economy, and that's exactly how decisions are being made. And I think influencers are a very, very big part in driving this entire knowledge or information to the consumer. So so I would definitely say that they are crucial to the entire ecosystem in creating awareness about a concept, about a brand, about usage of something. However, one thing to keep in mind is India is largely a very trust deficit, as it's not like, the economy as such is very, very, very trust deficit. So at least in my experience, I have seen that they majorly drive awareness, but from a purchase making process, they would rather trust people who they know, or they would rather trust people who, people who are consumers just like them. So that is probably what my answer to the second question would be.
Wonderful. I think that was a very interesting perspective. Thank you for that, Malini. And this concludes our panel discussion. Great insights by everyone. And thank you so much to all the speakers for joining us today, taking out time. We discussed some of the key trends that are shaping up the D2C industry. We discussed the core essence of D2C platforms, how they are shaping the traditional format of doing retail in India. And thank you again, and please stay connected to ETRetail for more such insightful conversations. Thank you.